Okay, we'll call the regular meeting of council for May 25th, 2021 to order at 3 p.m. And I'll ask Councillor Masterman, as far as the agenda goes, I have, there's one added item being 6.7, the community bursary program. I've also got one minor little move being item 6.1 needs to be moved just before Leanna presents the property tax bylaw. We're going to have Stuart present the property tax assessment because it's information that frames the bylaws, I guess. So I'll ask for a motion from Councillor Masterman that council adopt the agenda for the regular council meeting, May 25th, as amended to add item 6.7, the community bursary program recommendation from the Foothill School Division, as well as the move of 6.1 to just before 5.2, please.
And I'll make that motion, Mayor Snodgrass.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. Ask for a motion from Councillor Nychuk that the following minutes are adopted by omnibus motion in accordance with council's procedure bylaw. May 7th special council minutes, May 10th regular council minutes, May 10th special council minutes, and the strategic priorities.
I'll make that motion for you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, all in favor? Carried. Kara, any public comments?
There are no public comments.
No, well, I got one, but I'm going to hold my breath. Bylaw, second, third reading. Sarah, land use bylaw.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Today, Council will be considering the second and third readings for bylaw. Council will be considering the second and third readings for bylaw 4594/2021 to amend the land use bylaw. There were 3 individuals that spoke out in opposition to the bylaw at the public hearing. The comments that were shared in opposition to the bylaw included the fact that there have been multiple requests for front-facing attached garages, even if there is already a back lane, and concerns about the variance processes to existing subdivisions. Staff have reviewed these pieces of feedback, and the most common variances that have been requested over the course of the past few years since the original land use bylaw was passed in 2017 are the distance that a garage may project from an attached house and the permitted width of a driveway access. Administration issued a letter to one of the local developers in 2017, confirming to them that the town would support driveway widths up to 6.1 meters and garage projections greater than 1 meter, which was the limit in the land use bylaw based on design quality. And the town has generally been limiting the projection distances to be no longer than 7.32 meters. Administration has been applying these allowances to developments that don't have rear lanes in Hampton Hills Estates, in Montrose, and in Highwood Village. Administration is proposing the creation of a new policy for supporting driveway widths onto primary thoroughfares that are up to 6.1 meters wide, specifically on vacant lots and also supporting attached garage projections of up to 7.32 meters, specifically on vacant lots in Hampton Hills Estates, in Montrose, and in Highwood Village that are part of existing and approved subdivisions. If council is supportive of this proposal, administration would set up meetings with the developers of those 3 different subdivisions and discuss the parameters with them. We would also get a list of their lots to which they would want these allowances to apply, and we would create a map to be part of that policy. So it would be very clear which lots this applies to. The policy would then be brought forward to council for review and consideration before implementation. Administration is not supportive of making blanket exceptions for infill lots, which do have access to laneways. That was a concept that was brought up at the public hearing. Administration is, the development authority is able to consider variances on a case-by-case basis regarding where the vehicle access would be to different lots, and regarding the design of the garage, if they want an attached garage. However, in those circumstances, the onus is on the applicant to explain why using the rear lane is not possible. And they would also need to explain how the two guiding principles of the land use bylaw are still being upheld. So if there were compelling reasons that were brought forward by these applicants for this style of development, the development authority would definitely be open to supporting the variance on a case-by-case basis. However, it is generally possible to accommodate a garage in the rear if there is not an existing curb cut on the property, because these infill lots that we're talking about do typically have access to rear laneways. There have also been some concerns raised about the level of snow and ice removal that the town provides to the laneways. All laneways within the town are categorized as priority 4 roadways, as per the town's approved snow and ice removal policy. So according to that policy, commencement of operations, meaning removal of the snow, starts when there is hard packed snow, and the standard to be achieved is where access is essential. Essential access refers to being able to access a critical piece of infrastructure like a wastewater lift station, or in the event of an emergency, for example, if there was an emergency utility repair. So those are the current standards of when the town would actually go in and remove snow and ice from a laneway. This policy is monitored and evaluated on an annual basis through a report. It is specified in the snow and ice removal policy that this report is brought forward by operations by June 30th of every year. So if there are concerns about the town's level of snow and ice removal that's being provided to citizens, that could be considered at the time of the annual report to consider that level of service. In conclusion, council's options at this time are to choose to support the proposed recommendation. Council could choose to not support the proposed recommendation, defeat the motion, or 3, council could choose to refer the recommendation to a committee of the whole meeting for further discussion. Administration recommends that council give second and third reading to Land Use Bylaw 4594, 2021, and that council direct administration to create a new, to prepare a new policy for supporting driveway widths onto primary thoroughfares that are up to 6.1 meters or 20 feet wide, and supporting attached garage projections of up to 7.32 meters or 24 feet, specifically on vacant lots in Hampton Hills Estates, in Montrose, and in Highwood Village that are a part of existing and approved subdivisions. Are there any questions?
Nobody's raising their hand, so I'll start my list. Sarah? The driveway widths and the garage projections, I'm very happy to see that. That's basically the grandfathering clause that we were looking for in those existing subdivisions. So that's excellent. I can support
Okay.
that 100%. Some of the other changes, the temporary building permit, so that, you know, these guys can get footings and foundations in at their own risk while they're going through any variance requests process. And, you know, when I first saw that, I thought, well, that's really cool. That's nice that administration and we're working with these guys and allowing them to get going while they do the go through the variance process, because it's 21 days just for the public posting. But I also got feedback from one of the builders that's been very vocal about our land use bylaw, and you know, he went back and said, I don't know. I don't know if that's a good idea or not to allow that to happen. And we talked about it for a bit, because it's one of those things that once you allow somebody to start with the assumption and their assumption that there won't be any problems with the variance, if there is a problem with the variance, is the town of High River truly prepared to go back and make them tear out their footings and possibly do quite an extensive redesign of their building? Like that can get into a real messy situation with these guys, right? That, well, you said we could based on X, Y, you know, that, but you know, I just don't trust that it won't come back to bite us. So I'd like a little bit of your feedback as to how that process is going to work, that should there be something, comments made regarding their variance request that makes us say, now you got to pull it out. Are we prepared to do that?
That's some good feedback. So we have received feedback from the City of Lethbridge and the City of Medicine Hat. They use this process as well, and it was run through their legal team, and we've really just copied their process from them. They have said that they've never run into issues because people who think that there might be a possibility of getting an appeal just generally don't go forward with it. So I can understand where those cities are coming from, that most people would have a good sense of whether or not these developments are controversial. And we always are very forthright when we talk to developers about what it means to sign the voluntary waiver of claims, that it is absolutely at their own risk. And if it goes to an SDAB hearing, they need to take it out. So far, the only developers that have really used this are developers in Hamptons and Montrose that are doing the standard driveway width and garage projection. So I think that your point is well taken, that probably a lot of developers wouldn't need to use this if we had the policy in place that we talked about at this meeting.
And I agree with you in those areas that we're doing this grandfathering thing, there won't be an issue, because we're already going to say it. Where my concern is areas like the southwest of High River, where we're doing these rebuilds on empty lots.
Yep.
And they're looking for variances on it. And, you know, because that's where it's much different than an existing subdivision. Now you're, yes, I guess you're in an existing subdivision, but a much more of a, I don't know how to say it. I guess the public and the residents that live there currently are going to have a lot bigger say on what goes on. And putting a house that fits in the Hamptons right now, or fits in the Highwood Village area doesn't always make sense in the southwest, right? And that's where we're finding is putting a snout house in the southwest. And are you going to be able to do that? So that's where I'm going. You know, you're going to put your footings in. And I think it comes up to another question as to how we publicize these variances. The white sandwich boards mean nothing. We have got to come up with something better than that. Because
We also put them on the website.
Yeah, the website, but nobody goes on it, right? I mean, when it's a sandwich board posted on the property, that's what they look at it. But even I go by, like you're driving by, and it's an 8x10 piece of paper with size 12 font on it. You know, unless you stop, get out of your vehicle, go in and start reading that thing. And I'll be honest, they're difficult to read. I know more than the average human being about this stuff now. And I read one over by us the other day, and I had trouble figuring out exactly what they were trying to do. So, you know, we've got to look at that as well, right? Because
right.
So that's my thing on this temporary permit. I'm okay with continuing on with it. I'm okay, but I really want to watch it, because if it comes back that and there was a build in the southwest, and one of the other builders complained to me about us allowing this variance to happen, you know, it's just going to get messy if we end up being in the position where we tell that builder, hey, you got to stop, you got to pull whatever you've done, you have to redesign now. That's going to get messy, because their head will explode, because that's going to cost them an enormous amount of money. That's just where we really want to be careful and watch that one. So that's on the temporary permit. The other question that I've kind of always had was landscaping requirements. And I'll get your feedback, Sarah, on that why are we involved in this? Telling somebody that owns a lot, that's building their house, and we're telling them what kinds of trees and stuff to put on their private property. I don't really get it. There's some boundaries here that.
Right. So when we're talking about the residential, we agree with you that it went too far before, because it was all based on frontage. So we got into situations where people needed 5, 6, 7 trees. We agree with you that that was too much. So right now we are proposing 1 tree and 2 shrubs for single attached lots. And when we get into like different types of developments, whether it's commercial, industrial, etc., we're looking at a certain percentage. I think that percentage is important, because you don't want to get into a situation where the entirety of the lot is taken up with vehicle circulation and the building. It is important to have some landscaping to enhance the character of the developments in our community. I feel that is also the case for developments that are on a smaller scale, single detached houses and semi-detached houses. I think it is reasonable for a developer to provide 1 tree and 2 shrubs to that development, because I think that it will increase the aesthetic qualities of that development as a whole when all of those lots have that landscaping. I completely agree that we went too far in the previous land use bylaw, basing it on frontage, because you were ending up with developers that needed to provide 5, 6, or 7 trees, and that was too far.
Perfect. Support your direction on that, and excellent explanation of why you made the change. So appreciate that. Thanks, Sarah. Next one, this variance process, when we're looking, and my experience is and I always say the Southwest, because that's so much of this rebuilding, and I don't really call it infill. Chris and I have talked about that. I don't really see it as infill because a lot of the empty lots that are there are just houses that were tore down after the flood, and we're just basically rebuilding a house in there.
Okay.
Infill to me is more, you took a 50-foot lot, chopped it in half and built two
I agree with your assessment.
infill style houses, right? Skinny houses. But more so this variance process that I've already kind of touched on. And I would really like to see these variance requests come to council for our feedback, and maybe even a motion or a blessing, but maybe we don't need to go that far, but at least for our feedback before they're even posted. And the reason why I say that is, and again, I'm not talking about Hamptons, Montrose, or Highwood Village, the existing things. I'm talking about using the Southwest as an example again, but when you put, a big snout house with these 7 or 8 meter projections of garage into something on 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th streets, it's a big difference, right? So that's where I would like to see these variance requests come to council, and before they get posted and before administration makes a decision. The reason being is, at the end of the day, it's your councilors that eat these.
Mhm.
We are the ones that catch it if there's a bad decision, if there's a bill that all of a sudden the community's like, well, and most of the time they're not paying attention until the sticks are going up, right?
Right.
The walls are going up and they can physically see, like, whoa, 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 what are you doing? That, well, the sandwich board was there. Didn't you read the sandwich board? Well, no. What's a sandwich board, right? So that's where I say these things always come back to council. And I think it puts administration in a bad position as well, because you guys go back, you say, well, we went through the process, we put the sandwich board out that you couldn't read, and that kind of met our obligations. We did it for 21 days and you didn't say anything. So, that's kind of the process and it was approved. That's an unfair position to put you guys in, Sarah. I really think it is.
Right.
And so I just think that we should have a look at these variances. We're the ones that live in these neighborhoods, and we got a good view on what that development would actually look like, and what kind of feedback we might get from others, right?
Mm-hmm. I do want to put out there that when we're creating the council reports, we do have to get the reports to our manager 5 to 6 weeks before the council meeting. So I think we need to be mindful of the timelines. But as long as we can accept those timelines.
That was the next place that we need to go is, we can't turn this into a 7-month ordeal to just because come to council. Like, I mean, like a quick thing at a committee of the whole meeting, the meeting prior to the posting. Just, hey, here's where we're going. This is what we don't need. A report. We really don't. We don't need a report. We need a picture of, this is what the builder's requesting. This is kind of what it's going to look like. Here's the variances. Where's your feeling on this, council? Mm-hmm. If we got big concerns or something, well, then let's talk about those at the time. But no, we need this massive process and policies and all this crap. No, we just need to have a discussion at a committee of the whole meeting. Quick.
Okay.
Right. And then a 4x8 sheet of the variance request on the front end of that development. That's my dream. Show people what it's going to look like after the fact. Schematics and 8x10 sheets of paper, or 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper with all this text on it that you got to read. No, you got to show people what it looks like. That's what gets their attention. So I don't know. That's another thing to talk about. But I do think we have to do a much better job at posting these variances on the lot so that they're not going to the website to check on. It just doesn't happen. So somehow we got to figure that out better. But so we can talk more about that with Chris as to how these variances come before council, but I really think that's important. And one other final comment that doesn't have a lot to do with the actual land use bylaw, but is the amount of money that we hold when people are doing these infill developments and when these builders are coming. And I think it's $1,000 that we ask for a bond of some kind to hold in case they damage the existing sidewalk or curbs or anything. We need way more money than that. The builders are telling me, like, asking for $1,000 for something that's going to be a $4,000 or $5,000 fix. We need to get to that $4,000 or $5,000 number to be able to protect us. We're dealing with one in Montrose right now, right? That's could be or might be a little different, but that's kind of, I don't know where that falls into things. I'm just spewing feedback that I've got notes for the last number of months as to the feedback that I've got from these builders. And
That
but
sounds good.
I think you've done an excellent job, Sarah. I think you guys have listened, and we've made like what I'm seeing is that you've dealt with the real issues that all the developers were talking about. We heard them and we're dealing with it. And thanks for doing a great job on this. Land use bylaw is a monster, and it's one that will always be monitored. So very well done.
Thank you so much.
Councillor Cooey.
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass, and thanks for literally ticking off about every one of my comments. So that's fantastic. I will make this short. I wondered about when you talked about things coming to council, if it's just a standing item on one of the agendas, and either there is something or there isn't something, and it's just there's always a space for it. You've talked a lot about the Southwest. I would like us to really think about these things. I'm going to call it in historic High River, the Water Tower Hill area, the Flats. I'm going to say Senator Riley area. I don't know what we call that area. I mean, I've been recently pointed out some builds on 2nd Avenue that are really intrusive and really impact the integrity of that community. So I just want to, I want us, we've talked a lot about Southwest, but I think it should really apply to what I'm going to call historic High River. And over the years, the historic High River will grow out. As far as the notifications, agree, it's got to be visual, it's got to be bigger, and also the location. I'm a person that it feels very intrusive to me to walk on someone's yard. And so I will not go up closer to the home to read something, just because it's not my property and I don't feel I should. So I think we can definitely do a better job of those notifications. It's kind of interesting. We're trying to balance the investment of the homeowner or the developer, but it's also about defining our community and ensuring that we are developing and building really great communities. And that's what this land use bylaw is about. And I'm glad to see us maintain the integrity of that intention, but we really haven't had a chance to test it out yet. So again, thank you, Sarah, and the entire team there for the work, and we'll continue to work through this document. So thank you.
Thank you.
I think that's excellent points. And yeah, I always refer to the Southwest, but I think it's pretty much any area outside of these ones that have been grandfathered into these variance requests. I think, because Kathy, you're absolutely right that, as the age of the homes go and some are tore down and for rebuilds, et cetera, then yeah, it's not isolated just to the Southwest for sure. And I like your idea of just a standing item on it at COW, at the committee of the whole meetings, that there's a standing item, and it doesn't have to be before the posting either, Sarah. It doesn't have to be, it could be during the posting, right? We could give our feedback, but I think we can just have a loose thing so that we're aware of it if questions come to us and give us feedback. And I agree with you on the variance posting. I've got one that's 4 houses down from me right now. And it's just kind of weird to go right up because it's kind of the sandwich board is sitting inside the driveway right now. And it's just kind of, I don't know the people or anything. So I don't know, really. Go skulking in there, kind of feel like, especially when you're the mayor, that the mayor's going in there or you're doing, just weird.
Okay.
Period. There's a lot of things that are weird about being the mayor. Who's the next question? None? We good? Taken care of? Okie dokie. Thanks very much, Sarah.
Thank you.
I'll ask for a motion from Councillor Kinghorn that council gives second reading to bylaw 4594/2021 as amended, and that council give third and final reading to bylaw 4594/2021. And further, that council direct administration to prepare a new policy for supporting driveway widths on the primary thoroughfares that are up to 6.1 meters wide and supporting attached garage projections of up to 24 feet, specifically on the vacant lots, specifically in Hampton Hills Estates, Montrose, and Highwood Village that are part of existing and approved subdivisions.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. I'll be happy to give you that motion.
Thank you very much. Further questions? All in favor? Carried. Thanks, Sarah. Well done. Congrats to you and Halid. Put you through the mill on that one, didn't we? Okay, we are going to which is item 6.1. We are going to deal with that right now, which the 2020 assessment update for the 2021 property tax. Stuart.
Good afternoon, Mayor Snodgrass, members of council. Just give me a second here. I'll just share my screen. There we go. Perfect. Can everybody see this? So good afternoon, Mayor Snodgrass, members of council, administration. On behalf of the assessment team, consisting of Liana Ashbacher, Anita Powell, and myself, just to give you an update of the 2020 assessment year. So just a quick reminder for assessment purposes for the 2020 assessment, our valuation date is July 1, 2020. Physical condition date, December 31st, 2020. We use 3 years worth of sales as per provincial legislation, and all sales are adjusted to reflect the value as of July 1, 2020. So just quickly, just to speak to trends that we've seen at the Calgary Real Estate Board. These are just quick numbers from the Q2 reports, 2019 and 2020 from the Calgary Real Estate Board. This is, of course, just based on their sales that have occurred, not on, it's different than our base, of course, because we look at all houses. But just to speak to the change in value, they're saying their benchmark price changed from 308.9 in the second quarter of 2019 to 310 in the second quarter of 2020. So not a huge change. And you'll kind of see that throughout this presentation regarding the 2020 assessment. It's just another opinion to throw in there. And just to look at the graphs, at the map, at the graphs here, like if you looked at Okotoks, so the city of Calgary, you'll see much bigger changes. Where in High River, things tend to be a little more smooth. We don't see erratic changes here in town typically. So we're going to speak to the taxable assessment. So on the left, we have the 2019 assessment year. On the right, the 2020 assessment year. Overall, in the middle here, we show the dollar change and the percentage change in the middle. And just to speak to the dollar change, the increase in the overall assessment for the town of High River from 2019 to 2020 was 19,072,580. So that's a 0.95% increase year over year. Biggest increases, I guess highlighted in yellow here, residential increase of 12 million and change. And of course, the introduction of the annex properties. They had an increase in the assessment base. So just quickly on an average change, so residential from 302,547 to 303 and change. Commercial 907,213 to 879, and industrial 1.9 to 1.8. So slight changes in the average. So I guess to speak to the more the distribution of the taxable assessment. Still the residential and farmland represents 83% of the taxable assessment. Well, sorry, here we are on the right-hand side. Non-residential changed from 17% as a proportion of the taxable assessment to 16, and of course an increase in the value of the annex properties. So just show you the distribution of the taxable assessment. So I guess to speak more to the assessment process, of course, all the new development that have occurred during 2020, once it's complete, forms part of the taxable assessment. So this table here, I shared with me from Safety Codes, 253 permits issued in 2020 for a value of 26,814,000 and change. So that development becomes part of the growth. So that will be part of the residential increase. Not a lot of subdivisions in 2020. I have 5 subdivisions by plan. So 2 new residential lots, 2 industrial lots, and then the subdivision around the Southwest Dike. 2020 was an interesting year. While we had greater plans for reinspection, COVID sort of prevented a lot of the plans we had. But we did finish, we had picked up the, sent out requests for information to Emerson Lake Estates. So last year we finished off the updating the property data and improving the consistency and value between those houses and Emerson Lake. And again, since I started with the town, we've been meaning to review the High River Village mobile home park. So we redid all of that park just to improve the consistency and the equity within High River Village. Of course, you're all familiar with the annexation. So in 2020, so the properties on the northeast, and then Red Tail Rise, and a small parcel on the southwest corner. So these are the properties on the northwest, Red Tail Rise, and then the other smaller properties. So my favorite saying is, we don't write the music, we just play the piano. Like, we don't make the market, we simply follow. We do just follow it. So just a quick, this in a snapshot, like in a nutshell, we review the sales in every neighborhood every year. Value models are developed for every housing type in every community. And then in doing so, in calculating the assessment, we have strict provincial standards, which we must adhere to, and I'll speak to them later, but we must be within 95 to 105% of typical value, so to speak. So I guess to speak to that, these are all the sales. So each of these red bars is every sale that occurred in High River. That's res, non-res, condo, multi-res, everything. So from July 1, 2017 to July the 1st, 2020, there were 804 sales. So value models were developed for each one of those sales. So there's all the different housing types are in there included. So for every group of sales, our overall median percentage has to be between 95 and 105%. We always shoot for 98% because that seems to work well. We could qualify for to meet the quality standards at 102, but it's a tough assessment to sell to the public. So 98 is usually what we're going for. And then this graph on the bottom just shows the relationship between the assessment and the sale price, right? So ideally we want them to be very similar. So you like it to be a fairly straight line and a very, very narrow line. So there's not a lot of difference between the market and the assessment. So here's just the residential changes by community. I won't go into them in specific great detail. If you have any questions about any area, by all means, give me a holler after the presentation. But so 2019 is can you see my mouse? Right. So here's 2019. Here's a 2020. These are the median values. Right? We always use median in assessment because that measures the center value for all of the different property types. So from 2019 to 2020, very little change. So these are all the residential areas on the top of this table. So very little change year over year in market value, right? A lot, we mentioned a $12 million increase in assessment, but a lot of that came from growth, right? So not a lot of change in the residential. The second group of properties are the condos. So again, not a big change, like the median overall for condos is like 1%. So really relatively small change year over year. We've got Homestead Acres, very little change there. High River Village, there was a bigger change. And just so you know, the overall assessment of all the units within High River Village hardly changed at all. It was just the distribution. We just improved the equity and consistency of the units within High River Village. And in the inquiry period, didn't hear any from anybody in there, so that was good news. At the bottom, we have the annex properties. So I'll just go down to the bottom right-hand corner. So the number, the asterisks in brackets, are the number of annex properties in 2019. So annex residential changed from 17 properties to 59, with a median value of 351 and change. Annex non-res went from 3 properties in 2019 to now 9 in 2020. Oh, I can't see, but that's writing. For median value of 64, about 650,000, and then farmland changed a little bit too because properties were added. There are 5 residences in Red Tail Rise with a median value of about 800,000, and then there's 25 vacant lots in Red Tail Rise. So just to show you, like meeting audits, really important. If we don't meet audits, it's a big problem for the town. So that's, we have many people to satisfy. We have to please the property owners. We have to do a good job for you, the council, and we have to meet quality standard for the province. So that's important. So these are all this is the residential annual audit study. So our residential median is 0.98. So we're good to go, right? The meeting audit is essential. So now we can speak to the non-residential changes. I got them highlighted in the red box here. Again, 2019 on the left, 2020 on the right. Commercial went down slightly, 2.65%. Industrial went down slightly, 1.92%. So they went down slightly. Commercial, the average commercial value from 907,000 and change to 879, 194. Industrial, 1.9 million to 1.8. So just to speak to these changes, it's really difficult to use the averages because the distribution of the numbers is so vast. Like for the commercial, they range from $8,600 to 7.8. So taking an average makes these numbers quite big, right? They're not very, we don't use those in assessment because they're not a reliable indicator of change. So what we do in assessment is we use the median value of that group, especially when we have such a big variance like here. And I put in a little blurb here about median and average. So just to show you then, like this second table here is the median change to the commercial and industrial properties. So from, yeah, this is 2019 here and 2020, very minor change year over year, right, to the commercial properties. So remember a few years ago, we had cap rate vacancy study. We had approval to have these studies conducted to help us with the assessment of the commercial non-residential properties. So we did implement those this year. 2020 was a very interesting year, a nervous year for assessors with all the changes. So the studies really helped a lot, and we worked a lot with the Outlook Realty to get a good sense of the data. So we use the same cap rate for all commercial properties. A lot of high vacancy in the downtown area, especially stores. And in reviewing the information we get from property owners every year, like sharing the lease information, the vacancy, every year we just get more data to do a better job of interpreting the lease rates. And in doing so, now we're trying to refine and stratify different types, like average stores, good stores. So we're separating those lease rates to give us a better idea of what those spaces are leasing for. Industrial properties, it's a separate cap rate and different lease rates, different vacancy rates. So they're all looked at differently. So while the COVID pandemic affected only the 4 remaining months of 2020, because it came in March, right? It was important. Like while it's only 4 months, we reached out to other communities such as like Strathmore, Cochrane, Airdrie, and Okotoks. We realized while it was only 4 months, we need to be cognizant of the effect that COVID had an effect on the economy. So it certainly affected lease vacancies and leases. So we really did our best to make adjustments to the assessment to reflect that. Because realistically, in the event of an appeal, for instance, really difficult issues to wrestle with, right? What's really impacting the assessment and the marketplace? So we reached out to, like I said, the municipalities, property owners, to do the best we could to identify those issues. So we did that, but we still have to adhere to quality standards with the province, best practices, and to come up with an assessment that's equitable and consistent. So here's, in a nutshell, here the non-residential sales. So we're at 16 from 17 to 2020. And our average assessment to sales rate, our median assessment sales ratio is 97. That's probably as low as we could go and still be approved by the province. So try to be as conservative as possible with little change. And it seemed to work, right? We've done quite well, I think, this year with regards to non-residential inquiries. So here's a report from Asset, just showing that we'll meet that quality standard. In addition to the marketplace, we look at the usual processes of looking at the community organization, property tax, exempt regulation properties, annex properties. We make sure that properties that are annexed are reflecting the same value as values used in Foothills County, and make sure that the valuation of large parcels is consistent with its use. Assessment notices were mailed February 26th. Inquiry period, 60 days, was March 8th through May 7th, with May 7th being the deadline for appeal. All in all, there were about 104 inquiries, 13 assessment changes through the 3051 of the Municipal Government Act, 38 tax agent inquiries, and initially 15 appeals filed. I think we're down to 13. We'll have to keep pressing away with those appeals. It's a bit of a process. We'll just continue working through it. Of the revisions, 13, 11 were residential, 2 were non-res. The assessment loss on the residential side was 75,500, and on non-res side, 672,300. And these are already included in the taxable assessment we've shared with you today. We have a website presence with property owners to make sure that we're giving them information and access to the roll, and any other tools they need or for inquiry. And then the assessment map, we still have 2019 values up, but pretty soon it's going to be populated with the 2020 assessment. And we find this very useful for property owners to look at values in the community, comparing their properties. A lot of people looking into High River tend to use the map, right? It's a very useful map. We've had good feedback from that. So that concludes our review of the 2020 assessment, and I welcome any questions you may have. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Stuart. Well done. It's a ton of information in a short amount of time. Questions from council? Don't have anybody with their hand up. I think we're good to go. Thanks very much, Stuart.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. Thank you, members of council. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present.
Thank you. I'll turn it over to Leanna for the property tax bylaw.
Well, I can tell you I'm not going to be as wordy as Stuart. My presentation with you today is on the same information, and basically what I have in front of you is the property tax bylaw for the 2020 assessments for 2021 taxes. And overall, you'll see that we see a reduction in all of the mill rates. What has happened is because we had the change in our annexation, we were able to have a shift over between the residential non-res and ensure that we are using the proper rates. With our annexation rates, we always have to use the lower of the Town of High Rivers rates and the Foothills County rates. We did see a significant decrease in our requisition on our school taxes of about $250,000. So this is where our residents are going to see the biggest bang. So overall, they're not going to see a major change in the property tax notice. What we have done, and we as a holistic we, which is all 7 of you and all of administration, is we have ensured that we can run the town on the same amount of dollars for our municipal taxes as what we did in 2020. So with doing that, we then just pass on the requisitions from the education and from our seniors amounts, and we see a reduction with our school taxes, and we see a slight increase of about $1,300 in our seniors tax. So if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer any of those.
Thanks, Leanna. Any questions from council? I see none, I hear none. Ask for a motion from Councillor Moore that council give first reading to bylaw 4599/2021, being a bylaw to authorize a property tax and establish property tax rates for the year 2021. And the council gives second reading to the previously mentioned bylaw, and that all council present give unanimous consent to proceed with third and final reading of the previously mentioned bylaw.
I will make that motion. Mayor Snodgrass.
Any further comments, questions? None, all in favor? Motion is carried. As for a motion from Councillor Nychuk that council give third and final reading to bylaw 4599/2021, being a bylaw to authorize a property tax and establish property tax rates for the year 2021.
Be happy to give you that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. Thanks very much, Leanna. Thanks again, Stuart. Well done. Back to Sarah for the patio areas on public lands, just to put the formalities for this one all dealt with, but.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The purpose of this item is to discuss the proposed policy and procedure for patio areas on public lands. A fee for this application is not recommended. Administration believes that this would be a similar application to a change of use or an intensification of use application, and the town does not charge a fee for those types of applications, so long as it is permitted under the land use bylaw. The town has received several inquiries in 2021 already for outdoor patio areas in association with bars, restaurants, and cafes. These requests have been highly time sensitive for the businesses involved, while recent announcements will see perhaps patios prohibited for the time being. The creation of a framework to guide the process is an important initiative. It is important for municipalities to have standards when reviewing and approving patio applications to ensure public safety, consistency in decision-making, and reducing the likelihood of potential land use conflicts. And this is particularly the case when the proposal involves the laneway. So in terms of circulation of applications, administration recommends the circulation of applications internally for 3 business days when they just involve sidewalk, and applications that involve a laneway, those ones actually need to be circulated to the shallow utility companies. I have reached out to all of our local shallow utility companies. They have stated that they require 5 business days for circulation. Administration recommends the requirement of notifying adjacent landowners for specifically laneway and public parking space applications, we don't believe that it's necessary just for a sidewalk application when the patio would be right in front of that business on the sidewalk. In an effort to save the applicant time, staff recommend that the applicant circulate their own proposal to neighboring property owners, and then that would need to go to the actual landowner rather than the tenant or the owner of the business, and request that those neighboring property owners provide them with a statement of support. An alternative to this would be that the town could mail out the notices formally, but this would add 2 weeks or more and would delay the process. The policy recommends a pedestrian passageway of 1.5 meters, so allowing people who aren't going to the patio to get from point A to point B on our sidewalks, and that would have to maneuver either right beside the building or through our various pieces of street furniture, trees, etc. And the applicants would need to show that on their site plan. There was an extensive discussion about insurance requirements. Staff are recommending that there be standard insurance requirements that patio areas have. That includes comprehensive liability insurance in the amount of not less than $2 million per occurrence, including the coverage of liability for bodily injury, death, and property damage in relation to the activities of the applicant, with the town as an additional insured, and liquor liability insurance in the amount of not less than $2 million. Again, that's per occurrence with the town as an additional insured. That is the standard option. However, the town has experienced a situation where the applicant was not able to attain this standard level of insurance. As they were a new business, they had not built up their insurance history with the insurance provider, so the insurance provider actually refused to give them that level of insurance. In this circumstance, if there are any businesses that are up against that in the future, staff recommend giving them another option, which would be comprehensive liability insurance, again at $2 million, as well as liquor liability insurance. Instead of $2 million, just go with $1 million per occurrence. Proof of AGLC ProServe certification, safe work practice or other operational standard documents outlining training of all staff that serve alcohol and procedures to ensure the safety of intoxicated patrons, and immediate notification of any changes to AGLC license or inspection results. So this option, essentially allowing $1 million rather than $2 million in liquor liability, would only be reserved for businesses that have proof that they've been denied coverage for the standard option, and they will need to keep in touch with administration on an annual basis to monitor their insurance coverage, and they should be turned over to the full $2 million as soon as is possible. Then there are also snow and ice removal considerations. So for the town of High River, our snow and ice removal contracts in the downtown run from November 1st to March 31st. So administration is recommending that that generally all elements of the patio area be removed no later than October 1st and reestablished no earlier than April 1st to correspond with those dates. But that being said, staff recognize that we might want to consider winter patios as part of a Winter City initiative for special events during Chinook or warm weather periods. And in this case, staff do recommend that the snow removal be the responsibility of the patio owners, and they'll need to submit a plan to the town, and that plan will need to comply with the snow and ice removal procedure. And that would be considered on a case-by-case basis. So that concludes that part of the presentation. So council's options moving forward are the council could choose to support the proposed recommendation and adopt the policy as presented. Council could choose not to support the proposed recommendation and not permit sidewalk patios and cafes. Or finally, council could choose to refer the proposed recommendation to a committee of the whole meeting for further discussion. And administration recommends the council support the proposed recommendation to accept the policy and procedure, that being POL -22 10800 for approving patio areas on public lands as presented. Are there any questions?
Thanks, Sarah. Good explanation. Councillor Kinghorn.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass, and thank you, Sarah. You've done an excellent job on this policy, and it was something that we really need to get done here in High River. But I have a couple of questions. How soon, I didn't see a time frame prior to when they want to open up the patio. Should they be submitting this a month ahead, 3 months ahead? Is there a time frame that they need to work within?
Well, I think that relates back to the circulation. So once we receive a complete application, we're saying that if it's just for a sidewalk and doesn't involve shallow utility companies, we can do the turnaround circulation. We can do a circulation in 3 business days. So we would just write up the approval on the 4th business day, essentially. And then when it does involve the shallow utility companies, they need a full 5 business days. So then we would write up the approval essentially on the 6th business day.
So if somebody was asking me, I should really say to them, get it in a week before you want to open up.
I think that would be very fair, yes.
Okay. Now, if I have a business downtown and I have a permit for a patio and I sell that business to some other operator, would you carry the permit forward with the new ownership, or would there have to be a new entire application process?
That's a good question. We're saying that we're allowing them for up to 5 years. So I think it would just follow the business. So if it was just like that site, I would say it would be reasonable for them to continue to operate. However, sometimes business owners want to do different things than the previous business owner. So if there was a change in configuration or anything related to a change in the approved plans, I would say that we would follow the same procedure that we would follow with any type of approved plan, which would be that business owner is allowed to continue as per the approved plans, but as soon as something in the approved plans changes, like on their side, they need to tell us and we need to redo it.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. Appreciate your help. Thanks.
Thank you.
And just a good question, Jamie. Just thinking on that, because of this, my experience in dealing with the ladies at 525, I don't know that you probably be better just to do a new application, honestly, because of this insurance oddity, right? Where it wasn't the business. It wasn't the business itself. It was the business owners that didn't have the experience needed to get that $2 million insurance, because this was kind of their first being very new as bar owners. That's where the crux came into play. You know, the previous owner that was there got the $2 million quite easily for her patio just because she'd had previous experience. So that's where it gets a little bit goofy on that insurance thing. The permit itself, but it just to make sure that the insurance requirements are in place. That does not follow that business. It follows the individuals that own that business, from what I've learned, right?
Yeah,
so
that's a very good point. I would agree with that answer now that I think about it.
Just to take something that was really easy and make it a nightmare now. Insurance, right? Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. Thank you, Sarah, for your presentation. I was just kind of wondering about if there was any stipulation for a patio owner wanting to extend the season a little bit, even during the summer months, like putting some kind of cover over the patio, similar to what they did with the long table celebration on 4th Avenue, or heaters, patio heaters, and whether there's a requirement for fencing of the patio area when you're serving liquor or close to the curb.
Okay. So we asked people to provide details of all of the patio elements that they're proposing. So that could include umbrellas. It could theoretically include an awning or other type of structure. I would be really interested in knowing what type of structure that that business owner might be considering, just because sometimes, depending on the size, it might actually require a building permit. That being said, I think it's something that we could make work if it seemed appropriate in the context. Propane heaters, that was absolutely a conversation that I had with our firefighters, and they assured me that there is no concern with propane heaters. So I actually wrote in our regulations section, number 5, actually, propane heaters are acceptable. Heaters must be placed away from public trees and hanging baskets. That was really the only concern, the interaction between like the landscaping elements and propane heaters. Of course, you don't want to have them close. And then the fencing or the separation. Our stipulations is that nothing can be permanently anchored into the town's property. People need to comply, or the business owners need to comply with the AGLC regulations. AGLC has reduced their regulations, so even just like a series of string lights to separate the patio space from the general public area is acceptable to AGLC. I have spoken with people from AGLC in the past, and they said that even just some posts with string lighting is acceptable to them. So what we're asking for is in the site plan, just an explanation of what they're thinking, because we want to make sure that it looks good in the community. That's the town's big concern. In terms of like their liquor license regulations, they're also going to have to submit that to AGLC, and that commission is going to be determining whether or not the fencing that they're proposing is appropriate for their requirements. And their requirements are basically just, they don't want any alcohol to be going into into like the general public area.
If you had two businesses side by side that both had a patio, could it be a partnership effort, and that it would be available for both establishments?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent idea. I think ultimately, at the end of the day, we're trying to make sure that the town is covered fully for any type of liability situation, so our taxpayers aren't on the hook for it. So I think it would have to be a conversation between those two business owners, like how are they going to share that liability insurance requirements. But if I think if they figured out a way to make it fair amongst themselves for how the insurance piece would work, I don't think that the town would have any issues with that. I think really at the end of the day, we're just wanting to make sure that our taxpayers are not on the hook for any types of incidents that happen on these patios, even though it is on the town's property.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. No further questions. I'll ask for a motion from Councillor McMillan that council accept policy and procedure POL 22-10800 for approving patio areas on public lands as presented.
I'll give you that motion.
Yep. Further questions, comments? All in favor? Carried. Thanks very much, Sarah.
Thank you.
Pedestrian improvements and cemetery ribbons. Yonji?
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss the contract award for 2021 miscellaneous pedestrian improvements. Since I last presented to the Council in March, a request for proposal was posted and closed with 3 proponents bidding. Before you is the proposal to award the 2021 miscellaneous pedestrian improvements and 2021 cemetery ribbons replacement to Eastbuild Contracting for $183,385. As a refresher, the miscellaneous pedestrian improvement is funded through the gas tax fund in the amount of $250,000. The total quoted cost to perform the sidewalk improvement is $161,000 from Eastbuild Contracting and $48,118 from Fortis for a total of $209,118. The cemetery ribbons replacement is funded through the Community Reinvestment Reserve Fund in the amount of $30,000. The total quoted cost to perform the ribbons replacement is $22,385 from Eastbuild Contracting. Please note that Fortis will be relocating the 3 street lights along the First Street that were in conflict with the new proposed sidewalk. The quoted cost from Fortis is still within the remaining allotted budget. This concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a reminder for me, Yonji, and I'm trying to bring that agenda up to get to that right spot. Maybe there's the new sidewalk on First Street. It's on the side of the houses, correct?
Yes.
Right? And
that's
have we,
the west side of the First
on the
Street.
west side, right?
Yes.
Have we notified those property owners that this is happening yet?
Formally, we have not notified, but I discussed with a few homeowners when I was doing a site visit with all proponents. So I think a few of them are aware, but no, not any, not an official communication with them.
Okay, just curious as I haven't heard any feedback from them. So just looking as to how some of their yards and everything are designed and built out, I'm quite sure we will be getting feedback from them. So, question quickly as to why we didn't put the sidewalk on the east side?
That was an option as well, but existing streetlights are already on the west side. So to move the streetlights to the east side, it will increase the cost. Also, there's already existing sidewalk north of the 10th Avenue. So it'll be good if we can just connect from north all the way to the south.
Understood. Okay, thanks, Yonji. And you want to keep the sidewalks underneath the streetlights as much as we possibly can, right?
We're planning to move the streetlights to the west a little bit, so there's no conflict with the sidewalk. Yes. But
the light will shine down on the sidewalk. That's the reason why we want to keep the sidewalk on that side of the road. Correct? Gotcha.
Yes.
Awesome. Thanks very much for the explanation. Makes complete sense. No questions from council, so I will ask for a motion from Councillor McMillan. Council direct administration to award the construction contract, including option work to East Butte Contracting in the amount of $183,385, excluding material testing and GST, and the council authorized the mayor and CAO to execute the contract for East Butte Contracting and Fortis.
I'll give you that motion.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. Thanks, Yonji. Well done.
Thank you.
Curling and leisure ice surface slab replacement. Riley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So today we are discussing the award of the demolition contract for curling and leisure ice. The tender closed on April 30th. We had 3 bids ranging from roughly 200,000 to 360,000. And the lowest bid, who was Respite, was approximately 100,000 lower than the second bidder. That did give us some concern given the big gap between the 2 bidders. But we did go and do reference checks on Respite, as well as talk to them about process and construction methods. All the references were fine, and they seemed to have a very firm understanding of the project. And so we are recommending awarding to Respite. Scheduling wise, we'll need a couple, probably 2 or 3 weeks to get the contract done and get them scheduled onto site. The work from there is about 4 weeks worth of work. And that's what this contract is. As an aside, we are actually, just this morning, I received 99% complete drawings for the reconstruction. So we will be reviewing those internally and having a conversation with our user groups with the intent of getting that tendered here shortly as well. So the intent is we could have something out, roughly be awarding construction shortly after Respite's finished the demo. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Perfect. Thanks, Riley. And as far as the user groups, I made a phone call to curling president Darcy Finley there a couple of weeks ago and just talking about it with him, and because it will disrupt the curling season, and there's concerns about what it'll do to their membership, as some of the diehard curlers will probably go curl in other communities for that year. And one email I got from one of their curlers said that I may never come back. Well, that very well may be a reality, and that's that person's choice to do that. But what we both agreed on is that if we don't do this upgrade and get this ice surface back going, the curling club is dead. They can't attract events or anything to there. They won't be able to, increase their membership or anything with poor ice surfaces. Curlers know exactly what good ice looks like, and you have to have it in order to attract people to your clubs. We both agreed that, regardless, it's construction, it sucks, it's a pain in the butt. We all know that, but it's absolutely necessary to get this done. And, this has been going on for 25 years with problems with this floor. So, and maybe I'm light on that number, but, we've got an excellent opportunity with the grant money and everything else to get this thing done. So let's just haul butt and make it happen and move on. So that's my spiel there. Has to be done. No further questions. So I'll ask for a motion from Councillor Couillard, Councillor Nychuk.
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass. Just to kind of follow up on what you were saying about getting this done. Riley, just coming back to your point about awarding the contract for the construction portion after the demolition has been completed. I'm assuming if you're talking about awarding it after the demolition, then there's still a period of time before the contractor will come in and start work. So are we going to have a down period between the time demolition is complete and the actual new construction starts? Or are you working towards having the contractor that's going to do the new construction work in as quickly as possible to the end of the demolition?
The intent would be to get those as close as possible. So our tender window is typically 2 to 3 weeks. We'll probably do 3 weeks on this one. We have to finish review and get the package together. So our tender close will probably be very close to the same time, hopefully a little earlier than the demo's done. And then it's then it's a scheduling conversation with our preferred construction vendor. And so what does that look like in terms of their schedule, in terms of mobilizing their crews and getting them on site in a timely fashion? And so there will be a process with award, whether it's because we'll bring it to council, we'll get the contracts done up. So there'll be a couple of weeks there as well. So I would expect there's going to be a couple of weeks, but like I said, we'll work to minimize that and try and keep it down to only a week or two.
Yeah,
we don't really want them too close either. So you want them as close as you can without interfering with each other's work.
Yeah, sure, because we're talking 2 months already just for this demolition piece. So that takes us into August. Then
Yes.
because we're really going to screw the curling schedule if we're talking about construction in October. Then we're really not talking about completion till the new year sometime, right?
Well, I have to have money spent by end of the year. I don't have a choice. So that's a condition of the grant.
I knew that one. You dropped that one to somebody along the way here. Yeah, that you have to have the money spent, but that doesn't mean the work has to be complete if the money has to be spent, right? I'm just looking at efficiency and expediency, and I'm just pushing.
I am too.
It's be nice to get done as quickly as possible, right? So
I agree.
Thanks for that.
I agree. Thanks, Mike.
No further questions. Ask for a motion from Councillor Cooey that council direct administration to award the construction contract to Respite Construction, the amount of $204,100, and that council authorize the mayor and CAO to execute the contract with Respite Construction.
I will give you that motion, Mayor Snodgrass.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. Long time coming for that one. 24th Street top lift, Andrea. Thanks, Riley.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss the contract award for the 24th Street top lift project. Since the budget was allocated in December 2020, the construction work for this project was put out for tender, which was closed on May 11th, with 6 proponents bidding. Please note that following the initial discussions about this project, a site view and review of the project history was conducted, and 4th Ave has been considered in the scope of work for the project, as it was included in the original subdivision agreement along with 24th Street. Before you is the proposal to award the 24th Street and 4th Avenue Southeast top lift work to Beaumark Paving in the amount of $499,903.69 in order to commence construction of the project. As a reminder, the 24th Street top lift project is funded through the Community Reinvestment Fund in the amount of $700,000. Taking into consideration the proposed consulting fees of $32,000, the pricing is under budget by approximately $168,096.31, and we should have adequate budget for any contingency or issues that may arise. That concludes my presentation. Are there any questions from Mayor or Council?
Councillor Masterman.
Yes, thanks, Andrea. Not a question at all, but boy, it's going to be good to get this one done.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
On that note, and you're the one that poked this one, Councillor Masterman, I'll ask you to give the motion that council direct administration to award the 24th Street and 4th Avenue Southeast Top Left project to Beaumark Paving for construction work in the amount of $499,903.69 and excluding contingency and GST, and the council authorize the mayor and CAO to execute the contract with Beaumark Paving.
Very, very happy to give that motion. Thank you.
Excellent. All in favor? Another big project going. Fantastic. Thanks, Andrea.
Thank you.
2020 accounts receivable bad debt write-off. Cindy.
Hi, good afternoon, Mayor Snodgrass and Council. As part of the accounts receivable policy for bad debt write-off, I am bringing this 2020 grant in lieu of property tax bad debt write-off for your consideration. On December 14th, 2020, we brought the 2019 grant in lieu of property taxes bad debt write-off in the amount of $28,397.61 to council, and it was passed by resolution 186, 2020. As part of the 2020 year-end process, we did a bad debt allowance of $54,672.79, which is 50% of the total amount of the 2020 municipal tax levy for the grant in lieu of property tax accounts. On March 23rd and 30th, we have now received a payment from the province of Alberta in the amount of $54,672.84, which is 50% of the 2020 municipal levy, and are now bringing forward the outstanding balance on the 26 roll numbers that are attached to this request for decision agenda for write-off in the amount of $54,672.79 for the 2020 grant in lieu of property taxes. Thank you very much for your time, and are there any questions?
Thank you very much, Cindy. Questions, comments? Councillor Masterman?
Yes, thanks, Mayor Snodgrass, and thank you, Cindy. So I just wanted to check on this. Was it last year or the year before that we decided to make a point and not forgive the provinces because they had decided to cut back on the grant allocation, or not the grant, whatever it's called, taxes in lieu, and I'm just wondering, I think, well, Cindy, if you could just clarify that, was that last year or the year before?
I believe it was the year before. Leanna, can you help me on that one?
In 2018, we brought the portion of the grant in lieu taxes for council's approval to write them off. At that point, you had, no, sorry, it was 2019.
Right. Okay.
We brought the grant in lieu property taxes to write off. Council then decided that they were not going to write them off in 2019 as they had paid 50% during the year. In 2020, we brought back the same report to write off the same 50% for 2019's outstanding taxes, and we did not bring any amount forward for 2020 outstanding taxes because we knew that we were going to receive a payment. We just didn't know how much that they were going to pay.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, I guess my feeling is, a protest is only a protest if the other party actually notices and cares even a little bit. So, yeah, so I'm not going to do anything snotty this time. Thank you.
That's disappointing. It's the only reason I gave you the floor. Councillor McMillan?
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass, and thank you very much, Cindy. So kind of along the same lines, I was wondering if we were going to do anything, and I guess just a little bit of clarification, because I was under the impression that the province said that in the near future, they would be cutting it back to 25%. Is that correct?
Councillor McMillan, we have heard that, but we haven't seen that officially in writing at this point. So at this time, we are still planning on billing them for the 100% and coming back to council with any outstanding amounts depending on when they have paid their portion.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And then just kind of a curiosity, how come some of the roll numbers don't have a civic address?
Some of those were from the Beechwood. So the Beechwood ones were all rolled up into just the legal description.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Cindy.
Okay.
Ask for a motion from Councillor Kinghorn that council authorizes the write-off of $54,672.79 in grant in lieu of property taxes.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. Reluctantly, I will give you that motion.
All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Couple of spite votes. Thanks, Cindy, very much. Community bursary program. Who's presenting this one? I don't recognize this name. Kara? Somebody?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So I'm here today to present the recommendation from Foothill School Division. So you will recall that earlier this year, Council had passed the community bursary policy, and this policy sets out the criteria that high school applicants must meet in order to be eligible for the community bursary, which can be used towards post-secondary education. And so this policy requires the school division to review all of the applications that have been received and to ultimately make a recommendation to council regarding who the successful recipient should be. And so this year, Foothill School Division has recommended Grace Kohler as the successful recipient. Yeah, so administration is supportive of that recommendation as well, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thanks, Kara. Fully support this recommendation. So any questions, comments from council? Councillor Masterman.
Sorry, I was kind of waiting to see if Councillor McMillan was going to jump in and make a comment about the number of young people that were nominated for this award and what great shape High River is in to have young people of that caliber who don't just go to school, but they do all kinds of things with their lives to try to make other people's lives better. And Carol said this so well earlier when we were talking about this, and it's yeah, it was good to have the recommendation of the school division and definitely Grace Kohler, who is just a wonderful recipient. And so just wanted to say congratulations to her and thanks to all the young people who did apply. You're all incredible. So thank you.
Excellent. I'll ask for a motion from Councillor McMillan that council award Grace Kohler with the community bursary for 2021, the amount of $1,000, subject to receiving proof of enrollment from Ms. Kohler.
I'm very happy to give you that motion, Mayor Snodgrass.
Thank you very much. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thanks, Kara. Council report, so coal policy update. So following our, just a quick one, following our letter that was sent out regarding our proposed Alberta coal restriction policy. Currently, Lethbridge County has sent their endorsement on our policy proposal. So we have that, which thank you very much to Lethbridge County for stepping up and recognizing the dangers of going down the road of coal. I've got 3 or 4 others that have expressed, currently have expressed their willingness to come on board with us, yet they're waiting for their council meetings to get the formal approval from their council to move forward with it. So there's more in the waiting. And just one other little item that I just happened to see, that Foothills County is meeting with Atrium Coal on June 2nd at 3:30 p.m. It'll be a public meeting, so be interested to see what how that conversation goes and what Atrium and Foothills have to say. So any other questions, comments on that? No? I'll turn it over to Chris for where we're at with the COVID update.
Well, thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. Not much to really report. No real change, no real announcements today. Our CAO meetings be moved again to Friday, so I expect something to be announced about relaunch and reopening Friday and leading into next week. As of yesterday, we have 50 active cases within the town, and we're still 295 cases per 100,000 people. And our town facilities, in particular recreation, remain closed to the public. Online and virtual programming still is underway and still is taking part. And our office here is at a reduced capacity as well, due to some of our close contacts that we've had. We've reduced the number of staff further within our space here, so we can make sure that we can manage those close contacts a little bit better from that perspective. We have had some complaints about protesters within the community, and we've had the RCMP talk to them to reduce any harassment or impeding access to crosswalks and sidewalks. But we have informed the RCMP to keep them, to allow them to continue the protest, but just don't impact people that are using the sidewalks or those crosswalks that they may be occupying. So that's just an update from that perspective. I had no further complaints over the weekend about any of the protesters, but I'll touch base again with enforcement and the RCMP later this week as well. So that's really all I have to report.
Excellent, thank you. And yes, it is important that if you're protesting, you be respectful to other human beings. We had a couple of instances there the last couple of weeks ago anyway, so can't be doing that kind of stuff. So we'll keep an eye on it. So thanks, Chris, for touching base with the RCMP and making sure they're keeping these people aware of how the rules are. So Councillor Masterman.
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass, and thanks, Chris, for that report. I've been asked a couple of times whether these protesters, in fact, need any kind of town permit, because they're certainly in excess of the number that should be together right now. But do they require any kind of town permit to do their Sunday afternoon walkabouts?
Technically, no. Protesting is kind of one of those first rights to allow freedom of speech. And so as long as they abide by, and the AHS is enforcing their guidelines, if the AHS is out there enforcing their guidelines, they abide by the social distancing and the social gathering requirements, they're allowed to continue protesting from our viewpoint. So we don't require a permit. We don't require permission from that perspective. We just ask them to be respectful of others and others' opinions, and protest in a respectful manner that all Canadians should actually be protesting, with non-violence, non-harassment, and freedom of speech.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Cooey.
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass. Just a little further to Councillor Masterman's question, just from the police committee meeting, our staff sergeant did report that when they have talked to them, they have asked that when they are gathering that they are in groups of 5, so they are at least complying with the restrictions. And from what they did observe after the conversation, they were doing that. So they were broken out into smaller groups.
Yeah, that I've noticed that in front of when they've been protesting on Center and Third, that they've been on opposite corners in smaller groups and well spread out along that corridor. So might be pushing the line and walking the line a bit, but it's their right to protest. So,
Councillor McMillan.
Thank you. And just along those lines, I took a drive around town on Sunday, and the most I ever saw at one point were 4, and they were definitely spaced appropriately. So they weren't, in my mind, they weren't disobeying the rules, because I just saw 4 at each spot spaced out.
Perfect. All good. Nothing further. Bunch of correspondence that's in there, a number of letters. So on that note, no further questions. Meeting adjourned, 4:41 p.m. Thank you very much.